A stone face woven from leaves stares from a cathedral wall. Is it a defiant pagan god or a profound Christian symbol? This is the Green Man, and his true identity is one of history's greatest artistic mysteries. By the end of this journey, you will understand how a single symbol can hold two opposing truths. We will uncover why medieval craftsmen carved this ancient forest spirit into the heart of their holy spaces, and trace his surprising revival in our modern world. What does a face made of leaves say about our own relationship with nature? Long before the first stone of a cathedral was laid, the spirit of the Green Man walked in the ancient woods. His earliest ancestors were the gods of the wild places, the deities of the untamed forest. In the misty groves of the Celts, we find Cernunnos, the horned god. He is often shown seated cross-legged, a torque around his neck, with antlers sprouting from his head. He is a lord of animals and a symbol of fertile, natural power. This was not a god confined to a temple, but one who lived in every rustling leaf and every deep, shadowed thicket. Across the Channel, the Romans had their own version of this nature spirit. Look at carvings of Oceanus, the god of the great river that encircled the world. His face is often grim and powerful, framed by a writhing beard of seaweed and crab claws. A marine version of the leafy mane, we would later know. These were not just gods, they were personifications of the life force itself. And then there is the figure that stalked the folklore of medieval Europe, the wild man. He was a creature of the untamed wilderness, covered in shaggy hair, often depicted wielding a club. He represented raw, primal humanity living outside the bounds of civilization, a direct descendant of those ancient nature spirits. So when the first medieval stone carver picked up his chisel, this potent idea was already waiting in the cultural memory. It was the idea of a face that was not just human, but also plant, a being that was both person and place. The Green Man did not simply appear, he grew slowly and inevitably from this deep, symbolic soil. Yet within a century, this wild spirit of the woods found an unlikely new home. He began to appear, carved in stone and wood, inside the very heart of the new Christian world, the great cathedrals and parish churches spreading across Europe. This was the 11th and 12th centuries, a time of profound faith and monumental construction. It is a staggering paradox. How could a symbol so deeply rooted in ancient nature worship flourish in an age of such intense Christian devotion, within the sacred walls meant to signify a triumph over that very paganism? The answer is not simple, and it lies in the hands of the artisans themselves. These stonemasons were part of traveling guilds, bands of highly skilled craftsmen, who moved from one great building project to another. They carried with them pattern books, collections of designs and motifs passed down through generations. In these books, the old faces from the forest, the foliate heads of folklore, likely persisted. They were part of a shared visual language, and when a mason was tasked with decorating a roof boss, a misericord, or a capital, he reached for the familiar. He carved what he knew. Another powerful theory points not to the craftsman's tools, but to the people in the pews. The rural populations of medieval Europe had only recently been converted. Their Christianity was a thin veneer over a deep well of ancient belief. The old gods of the spring, the harvest, and the forest were not so easily forgotten. They were simply reinterpreted. So when these villagers looked up and saw the Green Man staring down from a pillar, they may have understood him not as a pagan challenge, but as a Christian affirmation of God's creation. He was a reminder that the divine was present not only in the scriptures, but in the living, breathing world outside the church door. This silent face woven from oak and vine became a bridge between two worlds, one new and official, the other ancient and instinctual. Look closely at the face emerging from the stone. You will find he is not one man, but many. The green man has a distinct anatomy, a set of recurring features that allow us to classify his many forms. The most common type is the simplest, known as the disgorging head. Here, two sturdy stems or vines sprout directly from the mouth, unfurling into a cascade of oak, hawthorn, or vine leaves that frame the face. It is a peaceful, almost gentle expression, as if the man is breathing out the very essence of the forest. Then there is a more startling version, the bloodsucker head. This design is far more visceral. Foliage does not just flow from the mouth, but bursts aggressively from every opening. Thick stems erupt from the eyes, the nostrils, and the ears, sometimes even sprouting from the neck or forehead. The face appears to be consumed from within by a wild, uncontrollable growth. It is a powerful, almost unsettling image of nature's overwhelming force. A third type is the foliate head, where the face itself is entirely made of leaves. The features are carved directly onto the surface of an acanthus or oak leaf, the eyes and mouth peering out from a mask of pure greenery. These carvings are not random. The type of leaf is often a deliberate choice. Oak leaves symbolize strength and endurance, while vine leaves can connect to Christian symbolism of the Eucharist. So the next time you step into an old church, look for these telltale signs. Is the foliage flowing gracefully from the mouth, or is it erupting violently from the eyes? That simple distinction can tell you a story about the carver's intent. A silent language of leaves, carved in stone for us to decipher. These early Romanesque carvings are often startling in their raw power. Carved between the years 1000 and 1150, they are not the gentle foliate heads of later periods, but something far more primal. In the shadowy heights of a cathedral like Autun in France, you might find a green man serving as a sturdy corbel, his face contorted, his leafy mane seeming to strain under the weight of the stone above him. Or he might peer out from the side of a heavy column capital, a hidden detail in a forest of stone. These figures were not yet the fully integrated symbols of a harmonious creation. They were often placed on the periphery, powerful but contained. Their style was frequently grotesque, with exaggerated features and a wild, almost aggressive energy. The foliage does not simply adorn them, it consumes them. Stems burst from their mouths in a silent scream. Leaves sprout from their eye sockets, transforming the human face into a thing of the wild. So what did this fearsome version of the green man mean to the medieval mind looking up at him? One compelling interpretation is that he represented sin and mortality. He was the untamed flesh, the chaotic natural world that had not been redeemed by grace. In an age deeply concerned with the struggle between salvation and damnation, the green man could be a potent memento mori, a reminder that man, like the leaves, will wither and die. He was the old, pagan world that needed to be subdued by the new, triumphant faith. His very image captured and put to work holding up the church, literally supporting the new order. He was a warning carved in stone, a symbol of the wilderness that faith was built to conquer. And yet, even in this role, his vitality is undeniable. He is a captured force, but the force itself has not been diminished. This tension between condemnation and celebration is what makes the Romanesque green man so profoundly fascinating. But something remarkable began to change as the heavy, rounded arches of the Romanesque era reached upwards and blossomed into the soaring, pointed spires of the Gothic. Starting around the middle of the 12th century, the green man underwent his own transformation. The wild, grotesque figure of the previous century did not disappear, but he was joined by a new kind of carving, one that was more intricate, more beautiful, and far more integrated into the very fabric of the church itself. This was the age of the great Gothic cathedrals, and the green man flourished within them like a vine in a well-tended garden. At Chartres Cathedral in France, a masterpiece of high Gothic architecture, you can find him nestled among the stone foliage of the choir screen. His expression is often serene now, the foliage flowing from his mouth in elegant, symmetrical tendrils that harmonize with the intricate stonework surrounding him. He is no longer a captured monster on a corbel, but a quiet participant in the sacred symphony of the building. This shift is even more pronounced in England, at a place like Southwell Minster. Here in the chapter house, the carving known as the Leaves of Southwell represents the absolute pinnacle of naturalistic stone carving. The foliage is so detailed and botanically accurate, you can identify individual species of oak, hawthorn, and maple. The green men here are woven into this stone tapestry, their faces almost gentle, their leafy manes a celebration of the divine artistry found in nature. And of course, there is the famously enigmatic Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, where the green man appears again and again, over 100 times, peering from every surface, a veritable chorus of foliate faces. He is carved onto the apprentice pillar, stares down from the ceiling, and hides in the arches, his presence so pervasive it feels intentional, a core part of the chapel's mysterious message. This new integration is the key. In these Gothic spaces, the green man was no longer just a warning about the untamed wilderness. He was becoming a symbol of wonder, a testament to the belief that God's creation was beautiful, ordered, and worthy of meticulous study. The chaotic force of nature was being reimagined as sacred geometry, and the green man was its human face. Yet the stone itself seems to whisper a different, more defiant story. What if the green man was never truly converted at all? What if his leafy gaze from the cathedral wall is not a symbol of Christian creation, but a secret signal, a pagan god in hiding? This is the heart of the pagan survival theory, a compelling argument that the old deities never died. They simply went underground, finding refuge in the art of the new faith, preserved by the hands of craftsmen and the hearts of a people who still felt the pulse of the ancient world in their blood. This idea was powerfully championed by folklorists like Sir James Frazer in his monumental work, The Golden Bough. He traced recurring patterns of myth and ritual across cultures, arguing that the ancient worship of a dying and reviving vegetation god was a universal human impulse. From this perspective, the green man is a direct descendant of these spirits, a symbolic representation of the eternal cycle of death and rebirth in the natural world. His leafy face emerging from stone is the same life force celebrated in the spring festivals of old. Later, Margaret Murray expanded this idea more controversially, suggesting an organized, underground pagan religion persisted throughout the Middle Ages. While her specific claims about witch cults have been widely disputed, her broader point resonates. The common people, whose lives were dictated by the seasons and the soil, likely held onto their deep-seated reverence for the forces that made their crops grow. The green man in the church could have been their silent nod to the old powers, a way to honor the spirit of the forest without openly challenging the priest. Think of the medieval peasant kneeling on the cold stone floor. His head is bowed in Christian prayer, but when he looks up, his eyes meet the familiar, comforting face of the wild, a face his grandfather might have told stories about. The carving was a bridge, not of theology, but of the heart. It allowed the worship of the new god to coexist with a deep, ancestral connection to the land. So the next time you stand before a green man, ask yourself, are you looking at a Christian symbol? Or are you witnessing a quiet act of cultural preservation? a whisper of the old gods that refused to be silenced. But another story is carved into the stone, one that reads the same face through a completely different lens. For many medieval theologians and clergy, the Green Man was never a pagan stowaway. He was a profoundly Christian symbol from the very beginning, a new leaf on an old vine. His meaning is rooted in the language of the Bible itself. In the Gospel of John, Christ declares, "I am the true vine." When the Green Man's face is wreathed in grapevines, he becomes a direct visual sermon of that verse, a representation of Christ as the source of all spiritual life, with the faithful as the branches. Consider also the words of the Psalms, that all creation declares the glory of God. The intricate leaves sprouting from this stone face were a celebration of that divine artistry, a reminder that the Church itself was a part of God's magnificent natural order. The most powerful Christian interpretation, however, connects the Green Man to the core promise of the faith, the resurrection. Think of the foliage not as consuming the head, but as bursting forth from it. This is the new life that springs from death, a perfect parallel to the resurrection of Christ. The stone head represents the tomb, and the vibrant, living leaves are the eternal life that emerges from it. He is a symbol of hope, a promise that from the coldness of death, a glorious and everlasting life will bloom. Even the concept of the sinful man could be woven into this image. The old, unregenerate person, the Green Man of earthly desires, is put to death, and from that spiritual death sprouts the new creation in Christ. So from this perspective, the Green Man is not a secret pagan. He is a beautiful, multi-layered piece of Christian theology, carved in stone for a largely illiterate population. He is the true vine, the glory of creation, and the hope of resurrection, all staring silently down from the pillars of the Church. Perhaps the most haunting interpretation lies not in life, but in decay. Look again at some of the older, more weathered carvings, and you will see a skull-like quality to the face, the leaves appearing withered and brittle. This is the Green Man as a memento mori, a stark and sobering reminder of a universal truth. Remember, you must die. In a world where life was often short and brutal, the medieval mind was intensely preoccupied with the afterlife. This was not a morbid fear, but a spiritual necessity, a constant meditation on the fate of the soul. The Green Man's decaying visage fit perfectly into this worldview. His face, half human and half plant, illustrated the transient nature of all earthly existence. Just as the lush green leaves of summer inevitably turn brown and fall, so too does the human body return to the earth from which it came. He was a symbol of the physical self, destined for decomposition, a powerful counterpoint to the promise of the eternal soul. This theme was echoed everywhere in medieval art, most vividly in the Danse Macabre, the dance of death. In these chilling murals, a grinning skeleton leads people from every walk of life, from pope to peasant, in a final egalitarian dance toward the grave. The message was clear: no one escapes death. The Green Man is a quieter, more botanical version of this same message. He does not dance, he simply stares, his very substance a testament to the cycle of growth, death, and decay that governs all living things. He reminds the faithful that while the spirit may aspire to heaven, the body is of the earth, and to the earth it will return. This duality makes him a profoundly complex symbol, one that holds both the vibrant joy of creation and the sobering reality of mortality within the same stone face. The stone carvings in the cathedrals were not the Green Man's only home. He escaped the cold walls of the church and danced through the streets in the riotous celebrations of spring. Across the villages of England, his spirit came alive every May Day in the form of the Jack in the Green. This was no static carving, but a living, breathing spectacle. A man, usually a chimney sweep, would be completely enclosed within a tall, conical frame woven from fresh greenery, so covered in leaves and flowers that he became a moving, dancing thicket. He was the very embodiment of the returning forest, leading a boisterous procession through the town, his steps shaking loose petals and the scent of crushed leaves. He was accompanied by musicians and revelers, a communal outpouring of joy at the return of warmth and life. This Jack in the Green is a direct, undeniable descendant of the foliate heads in the churches, a folk memory made flesh and leaf. He shares a deep kinship with other European folk figures, like the Garland King, who was crowned with a heavy, flower-laden wreath and paraded as a symbol of summer's triumph. And in him we hear the clear echo of that much older figure, the wild man of the woods, the shaggy, primal being who represented the untamed power of nature itself. Here, in these vibrant, noisy processions, the Green Man was not a theological symbol or a memento mori. He was a cause for celebration, a testament to a deep, enduring human need to honor the cycle of the seasons and the irresistible force of life returning to the land. The Green Man's journey did not end in the cathedral. His leafy face appears again centuries later, not in stone, but in the cryptic pages of Renaissance alchemy. Here, in the secretive world of the laboratory, he takes on a new and profound meaning, becoming a symbol of the most sacred process, the great work. Alchemists were not merely trying to turn lead into gold. They sought to transform the base human soul into a perfected spiritual state. For this, they needed a specific, vital force, a power they called viriditas. This Latin word translates simply to greenness, but it meant so much more. It was the raw, primal, life-giving energy of nature itself, the same force that pushes a seed from the cold earth and unfurls it into a vibrant green leaf. This viriditas was the essential spark needed to begin the alchemical transformation. And so the Green Man appears in their intricate illustrations as the very embodiment of this power. He is the initial materia, the unrefined substance, both physical and spiritual, that must undergo a sacred death. In one powerful image, you might see the Green Man, his head sprouting leaves, lying prone as if in a coffin. This is not an end, but a necessary beginning. Just as a seed must seemingly rot in the ground to release the life within it, the raw green power represented by this figure had to decompose, to die to its old form. Only through this dissolution could it be purified and reborn into a higher state, achieving the philosopher's stone. The foliage sprouting from his mouth and eyes is no longer just decoration. It is the visible sign of that potent, living force waiting to be harnessed and transmuted. He is the beginning of the magnum opus, a reminder that all true creation, whether of gold or of the spirit, must start with the raw, wild, and verdant energy of life itself. This verdant face, however, could not survive the coming storm of pure doctrine. The seismic shift of the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century brought with it a fierce and cleansing wind that swept through the churches of Northern Europe. The new religious leaders, from Martin Luther to John Calvin, preached a faith centered on the Word of God as found in the Bible, and a deep, profound suspicion of anything that smacked of superstition or popish idolatry. The lush visual world of the medieval church, with its saints, its relics, and its mysterious foliate faces, was now seen as a dangerous distraction from the pure text of Scripture. In this new ideology, there was no room for a leafy man who whispered of ancient forests. He was not a symbol of resurrection, he was an idol, a pagan remnant, a stone lie that needed to be torn down. This was not a quiet fading, but a violent purge. Zealous reformers, often called iconoclasts, meaning image breakers, took hammers and chisels to the very walls that housed the Green Man. They sawed off the finely carved heads of roof bosses. They defaced the faces peering from misericords, and they smashed the delicate capitals where foliage once flowed. In thousands of parish churches across England, Germany, and the Netherlands, the stone foliage was hacked away, leaving behind scarred and pitted surfaces, the ghost of a symbol where a face once bloomed. For those carvings that escaped outright destruction, a different fate awaited. They were simply forgotten, left to gather centuries of grime and dust in the dark corners of rude lofts and bell towers, their meanings obscured by a new religious language that had no translation for their silent, leafy speech. The great age of the Green Man, it seemed, was finally over, his long conversation with the faithful severed by the blow of a hammer. The Green Man did not remain buried in the rubble of Reformation for long. Centuries after the iconoclasts' hammers fell, a new generation began to look back at the medieval world not with disgust, but with longing. The 19th century's Romantic and Gothic revival movements breathed life back into the stone. As industrial cities swelled with smoke and soot, artists and thinkers began to see the Middle Ages not as a time of darkness, but as an age of faith, craftsmanship, and a harmonious relationship with the natural world. In this idealized vision of the past, they rediscovered the foliate face staring from the grime of old churches, and they saw in him a powerful new meaning. He was no longer a theological puzzle, but a poignant emblem of everything the modern world had lost. Antiquarians, with their meticulous sketches and detailed surveys, carefully documented the surviving carvings, pulling the Green Man from the shadows of neglect and into the light of academic study. But it was the artists who truly revived his spirit. The pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, in particular, embraced him completely. They rejected the industrial age's rigid classicism, seeking instead the vivid color, intricate detail, and spiritual sincerity they believed existed before the Renaissance. For them, the Green Man was a perfect symbol. He represented a mystical, organic connection to nature, a world where art and the living earth were intertwined. You can see his influence in the dense, symbolic foliage that frames the figures in paintings by Dante Gabriel Rossetti or John Everett Millais. The leaves are not mere background, they are alive with meaning, echoing the old stone carvings. This was not a simple copy of the past. The romantic Green Man was a new creation, a symbol of a deep, yearning nostalgia for a purer, more authentic existence. He became the guardian of a forgotten green world, a silent critic of the factory chimney and the machine. His return was a quiet revolution, an artistic attempt to re-enchant a world that was rapidly turning grey. For centuries, this foliate face had no single name. He was simply a curious carving, a disgorging head, a foliate mask. That all changed in the spring of 1939, on the eve of a world war, in the pages of an academic journal called Folklore. The author was Julia Somerset, Lady Raglan, a historian and folklorist with a keen eye for the patterns that connected village custom to church stone. In her article, The Green Man in Church Architecture, she made a bold and brilliant leap. She argued that the leafy heads in the churches and the living, dancing jack in the green of May Day festivities were one and the same being. And she gave him the name we all know today, the Green Man. This was not just an act of labeling, it was an act of creation. By linking the silent stone symbol with the boisterous folk figure, Lady Raglan wove two separate strands of tradition into a single, powerful archetype. She gave a scattered collection of carvings a unified identity and a story. Suddenly, this was not just an architectural quirk. It was a continuous presence in British culture, from the medieval cathedral to the village green. Her article landed like a seed in fertile ground. It provided a perfect, evocative name for a symbol that the Romantic and Gothic revival had already begun to cherish. Scholars now had a clear category to research, and a new wave of interest began to swell. The name Green Man itself was poetic, memorable, and strangely personal. It suggested a character, a personality, not just a motif. It implied a history and a power that reached far beyond the church wall. Because of Lady Raglan, we no longer see a series of individual carvings. We see the Green Man. She gave a face a name, and in doing so, she gave us the lens through which we continue to explore his mystery. The name given by Lady Raglan was a key that unlocked more than just academic interest. It opened a door for a spiritual reclamation, as the Green Man found his way home to the forest. In the 20th and 21st centuries, this ancient face has been embraced by modern pagan and Wiccan traditions, not as a curious artifact, but as a living god. Here he is often revered as the horned god, the masculine counterpart to the great goddess. He is not a distant deity, but an intimate force, the vital spirit of the wild wood, the untamed stag in the thicket, and the fertile seed in the soil. He embodies a sacred masculinity that is protective, generative, and deeply connected to the cycles of the earth. A far cry from domination, and instead rooted in partnership with the natural world. His role is defined by the most fundamental rhythm of all, the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The Green Man is the lord of this wheel of the year. In the lush, blossoming spring, he is the vibrant young god, full of potent energy and the promise of new life. As the sun grows stronger, he matures into the powerful, virile sovereign of the summer forest. And when autumn arrives and the leaves begin to fall, he willingly enters his sacrificial phase, retreating into the earth to ensure the world's renewal. This is not a final end, but a necessary transformation, a promise that the green will always return. You can witness this living devotion during the fire festival of Beltane, celebrated on May 1st. As bonfires blaze, modern practitioners honor the Green Man in his aspect of peak vitality. He is the consort to the May Queen, their symbolic union representing the sacred marriage of earth and sky. A ritual that channels the intense creative and fertile forces of the world at its most abundant. Similarly, at the summer solstice, when the sun reaches its zenith, the horned god is at the height of his power. Rituals held in forest clearings or sun-drenched fields give thanks for his strength and the lushness of the fully awakened world, even as participants acknowledge the turning point where the light will now begin to wane, and his journey toward the darker half of the year will commence. In these practices, the Green Man is no longer a silent stone symbol. He is a felt presence, a god who is invoked, celebrated, and thanked for his endless, cycling gifts of life, death, and glorious rebirth. His leafy spirit did not just dance in rituals. He began to speak through the pages of modern literature. The ancient symbol found a powerful new voice in the 20th century, as authors reached for him to articulate the growing tensions between humanity and the natural world. One of his most dramatic returns was in renewed appreciation for the medieval poem, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Modern readers and scholars see the Green Knight himself as a direct embodiment of the archetype. He is a colossal, emerald-skinned figure who rides into King Arthur's court, a living holly bob in one hand and a great axe in the other. He is not a monster, but a force of nature, issuing a challenge that tests the civilized chivalry of the Round Table against the raw, untamed power of the wild. When Gawain beheads him, the Green Knight simply picks up his own head and reminds the knight of his promise, proving that the cycles of nature cannot be so easily defeated by a man-made code of honor. The story becomes a profound exploration of our relationship with the natural world, where the Green Knight represents an older, more enduring power that humbles human pride. Centuries later, the English poet Ted Hughes summoned the green man's raw energy in his collection, God Eat. Here, the figure is a terrifying, transformative force. Hughes' version is a pagan nature spirit who erupts into a quiet English village, awakening primal instincts and chaotic desires in its inhabitants. This green man is not a gentle symbol of foliage, but a disruptive, almost violent life force that shatters social conventions and reveals the wildness lurking just beneath the surface of civilized life. In a completely different tone, Kingsley Amis' novel, The Green Man, reimagines him as a ghostly, malevolent pub owner. The story blends comedy and horror, as the protagonist confronts a spectral, leaf-sprouting entity that embodies his own midlife decay and moral failings. Here, the symbol is internalized, representing the wilderness within the human psyche, the tangled, overgrown parts of the self that we try to keep suppressed. Across these varied appearances, a common thread emerges. The green man in modern literature is no longer a quiet symbol in a church. He has become an active character, a challenger. He confronts our arrogance, awakens our buried instincts, and forces us to question our place in a natural order far older and more powerful than our cities and our rules. He is the voice of the forest, finally given words. That ancient face woven from leaves now stares out from protest signs and the logos of eco-friendly brands. The green man has become an unofficial patron saint for the environmental movement, his ancient form repurposed for a modern crisis. His image, once confined to stone, now appears on the websites of companies selling sustainable products, on the banners of activists marching for climate action, and in powerful public art installations that mourn the loss of ancient forests. He is a natural fit for this role. His very being speaks of a world where humanity and nature are not separate, but intrinsically fused. In an age of concrete sprawl and disappearing wilderness, he is a haunting reminder of a more integrated existence. An artist might construct a giant green man sculpture from the salvaged roots of a clear-cut forest, his leafy face a monument to what was lost. A protester might hold a placard with his image above the words, "Listen to the trees." This is not a new meaning imposed upon an old symbol. It is the oldest meaning of all, rising to the surface with newfound urgency. The medieval idea that the divine is present in creation finds a secular, desperate counterpart in the modern understanding that our survival is dependent on the health of that same creation. The foliage sprouting from his mouth is no longer just a symbol of life force. It is the breath of the planet itself, a visual plea for its preservation. His silent, stone gaze across the centuries seems to ask us one simple, profound question. Have we forgotten that we are part of this green and living world, and not its masters? That same ancient face now stares from the steel and glass of our modern cities. You can find the green man carved into the stone cladding of a new university library. His foliate visage a startling anachronism against the clean lines of contemporary design. He appears as a bronze door handle on a corporate headquarters, inviting visitors to grasp a piece of living myth. In public parks, artists construct towering sculptures of him from woven willow branches, his form changing with the seasons, growing and decaying in a silent performance. This is not mere decoration. Architects and artists are deliberately reaching for this symbol to combat the sterility of the urban environment. They use him to inject a shot of wildness, a deep historical memory, into spaces that can feel transient and disconnected. A new apartment complex might feature a subtle green man motif on its gateposts, a quiet promise that this place is still part of the living earth. A community garden might center around a mosaic of his face, made from recycled glass and local stones, making him a literal gathering point for ecological awareness. This modern revival is a conscious choice to re-enchant our surroundings. It acknowledges a deep human need for mystery and for symbols that speak to something older than the city itself. The green man in the park is not just a sculpture, he is a question. He asks us what we have built and what we have buried in our relentless march toward progress. His persistent gaze from a new building is a bridge across time, connecting our concrete present to a verdant, forgotten past, and perhaps to a more balanced future. This ancient face woven from leaves is not a story told only in the stone of Europe. The same archetype emerges from the deepest myths of cultures, separated by vast oceans and millennia. Look to the wild, wooded mountains of Arcadia in ancient Greece, and you will find the god Pan. He is not a man of leaves, but a man of the wild, with the legs and horns of a goat. His very presence is the spirit of the untamed forest, a sudden, thrilling panic that strikes travelers in the lonely places. He is the sound of rustling leaves and the pipes played at dusk, a direct parallel to the raw, untamed energy of the green man's earliest ancestors. Far to the east, in the rich tapestry of Hindu belief, we find a startlingly similar figure, but on a cosmic scale. Carved on seals from the ancient Indus Valley civilization is a deity known as Pashupati, the lord of the animals. He is depicted seated in a yoga posture, surrounded by wild creatures, with antlers or horns crowning his head. This is not merely a lord of the forest, but a master of all living things, a serene yet powerful embodiment of the life force that pulses through every creature. This figure would later be absorbed into the great god Shiva, the destroyer and regenerator of the universe, connecting the fertility of the animal world to the vast cycles of cosmic death and rebirth. Then there is the story of Tammuz, a god whose myth echoed through the temples of ancient Mesopotamia. He was a shepherd god, a deity of fertility and the harvest, who was loved by the goddess Inanna. His story is one of profound loss and cyclical return. Tammuz dies, and with his death the green world withers and dies. His consort descends into the underworld to retrieve him, and his annual return to the land of the living brings the spring rains and the rebirth of vegetation. He is, quite literally, the spirit of the dying and rising green world, a direct narrative expression of the cycle the green man silently represents. And across the Atlantic, in the jungles of ancient Mesoamerica, the Maya and other cultures revered the maize god. He was a beautiful, youthful deity with a head that elongated like a corn cob and hair that flowed like silken corn tassels. His story was also one of death and resurrection. The maize god was decapitated, much like the Green Knight, and buried in the underworld. From his buried body, the first corn plants sprouted, providing the staple food that sustained all of human life. He is the ultimate symbol of life springing from sacrifice, of humanity's literal sustenance emerging from the body of a divine, vegetative being. What do these figures from Greece, India, Mesopotamia, and the Americas tell us? They reveal a pattern so deep and so widespread that it seems to be woven into the very fabric of human consciousness. From the horned Pan to the antlered Pashupati, from the dying Tammuz to the resurrected maize god, humanity has repeatedly given a face to the powerful, mysterious, and essential force that makes the plants grow and the seasons turn. The European green man is not an anomaly. He is simply one local expression of a universal human need to personify the vibrant, sacred, and sometimes terrifying power of the living earth itself. This archetype of the wild did not remain confined to old stones and ancient poems. He found a vibrant new life on the silver screen, his primal energy channeled through some of the most unforgettable stories in film and television. Consider the haunting masterpiece of folk horror, The Wicker Man from 1973. The entire island of Summerisle is a living green man, a community that has fully embraced the old, vegetative cycles of death and rebirth. The figure of the wicker man itself, that giant, cage-like effigy, filled with sacrificial offerings and set ablaze, is a direct and terrifying descendant of the pagan spirit. He is not a gentle symbol of foliage, but a stark representation of nature's demand for a blood offering to ensure the harvest's return, tapping directly into the figure's most primal and unsettling roots. A different kind of fantasy brought us the Dark Crystal, where the gentle, wise mystics care for the life-giving crystal of truth. Their leader, the ancient Uru known as the Master, embodies a serene, almost alchemical version of the Green Man. He is a being of profound wisdom and deep connection to the natural order of his world, his slow, deliberate movements reflecting the patient, cyclical growth of a forest. He represents the harmonious, nurturing side of the archetype, the keeper of balance. Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth gives us a far more ambivalent and dangerous nature spirit. The faun, with his face of ancient bark and his horns of gnarled wood, is a classic Green Man figure. He is not a safe, Disney-fied creature, but a mysterious, unpredictable, and morally ambiguous being from a much older and wilder fairy tale tradition. He offers the young heroine Ophelia a path to a magical kingdom, but his tests are perilous, and his motives are never entirely clear. He perfectly captures the archetype's dual nature, a guide who is also a trickster, a source of wonder that is inextricably linked to terror. On television, the Green Man's influence is equally profound. In Doctor Who, the episode The Doctor's Daughter introduces a unique science fiction twist. On a planet terraformed by a progenitive device, a verdant jungle world gives birth to a new species literally grown from the soil. Their very existence a commentary on creation, life springing from the earth itself. Even the sprawling epic of Game of Thrones features the ancient non-human children of the forest and their powerful vegetative magic, which culminates in the creation of the White Walkers, a force of nature twisted into a weapon. These modern portrayals rarely show him as a quiet, foliate head. Instead, they almost universally tap into his most primal aspects, his connection to sacrifice, his untamable wildness, and the ancient, unsettling mystery that has always surrounded this face in the leaves. Yet woven among the male faces, a quieter, more enigmatic presence sometimes emerges from the stone. She is the Green Woman, a far rarer but equally potent figure carved into a handful of medieval churches. Her foliate head might appear on a misericord in Norwich Cathedral, or peer from a capital in the south of France. Her features serene as leaves curl from her mouth, or frame her face like a living headdress. Her scarcity in the historical record is itself a profound statement. In a world of art dominated by male saints and patriarchs, the appearance of a female form embodying nature's force feels almost subversive. She complicates the simple narrative, suggesting that the creative and destructive power of the natural world was not always seen as a masculine domain. These carvings are often interpreted through a Christian lens as representations of Eve, the mother of all living, her face now sprouting the foliage of both the fall and the promise of redemption. Or she might be a personification of the life-giving church itself, a spiritual mother nourishing the faithful. But her gaze hints at something older, a deep memory of the earth as a mother, a source of all life. This ancient feminine archetype has found a powerful modern voice in the concept of Gaia. Named for the primordial Greek goddess of the earth, the Gaia hypothesis, first proposed by scientist James Lovelock, reimagines our entire planet as a single living, self-regulating system. While a scientific theory, it resonates with the symbolic power of the Green Woman. Gaia is the ultimate nurturing mother, but she is also formidable and untamable. She gives us air, water, and soil, but she also brings storms, earthquakes, and plagues. This duality is the very essence of the divine feminine as it relates to nature, a force that creates and sustains, but also demands respect and will reclaim what is hers. In contemporary pagan and earth-based spiritualities, the Green Woman has been fully resurrected as this goddess. She is the Great Mother, Gaia, Ceridwen, or Demeter. She is the womb of the forest and the heart of the harvest. Where the green man often represents the cyclical spirit of the wild, the dying and rising god, the Green Woman embodies the ground of being itself, the enduring, fecund source from which all cycles begin and to which they all return. Her modern revival is not just a spiritual reclamation, but a necessary rebalancing. In an era of ecological crisis, the image of the nurturing yet powerful Earth Mother serves as a crucial corrective to a worldview that has often treated nature as a resource to be dominated. The Green Woman reminds us that the planet is not a dead rock to be mined, but a living entity to which we are intrinsically connected. She represents an ethic of care, reciprocity, and profound respect. To see the natural world as a mother fundamentally changes our relationship to it. You do not exploit your mother, you honor and protect her. So the next time you encounter the green man in his many forms, spare a thought for his often forgotten counterpart. The Green Woman's quiet presence in the stone, and her loud resurgence in our modern consciousness, completes the picture. She is the other half of a sacred whole, the deep, grounding, feminine energy of the earth itself, without which the green could never truly return. That single name, the Green Man, can be dangerously seductive. It gives a sense of neat, unified identity to a symbol that is inherently messy, complex, and wonderfully resistant to a single definition. The first and most crucial misconception to clear away is the idea of a singular, ancient cult of the Green Man stretching back in an unbroken line. The name itself is a modern invention, a powerful and poetic label given to him by Lady Raglan less than a century ago. Before 1939, these carvings were simply called foliate heads or disgorging masks, or were not named at all. They were seen as individual curiosities, not chapters in a single epic story. This modern naming gave the symbol a powerful identity, but it also risks flattening his history, making us see a unified character where medieval people saw a versatile motif. This leads directly to a second common error. Not every face peeking out from leaves in a church is the green man in the symbolic sense we now imagine. Sometimes a foliate head is just a foliate head, a decorative element chosen by a mason from his pattern book because it looked interesting and filled a space beautifully. There was no grand pagan conspiracy or deep theological statement intended. It was simply part of the rich visual tapestry of the medieval world, a world that loved to blur the lines between the human, the animal, and the vegetal in its art. The most persistent myth, however, is the search for the one true meaning. We have journeyed through his story and found not one truth, but many. He was a pagan survival hiding in plain sight. He was a profound Christian symbol of resurrection and the true vine. He was a stark memento mori, reminding us of our mortality. He was the spirit of the festive jack in the green. He was the raw material for the alchemist's great work. All of these interpretations are true, not because they cancel each other out, but because they coexisted in the minds of the people who created and viewed these carvings. A knight, a peasant, a mason, and a priest could all look at the same leafy face and see completely different things, and none of them would be wrong. The true power of the green man lies in this very ambiguity. He is a mirror, reflecting back the beliefs, fears, and hopes of the person who stands before him. He does not offer a simple answer, but an invitation to a deeper conversation with history, with nature, and with ourselves. His power lies precisely in the fact that he refuses to be just one thing. This enduring mystery captivates us because he is a living bridge, a symbol that effortlessly spans the deepest divides in our collective psyche. He connects our modern, urban lives with the ancient, wild heart of the natural world we often feel separated from. He stands at the threshold between our conscious minds and the untamed wilderness of the unconscious, that deep instinctual part of ourselves where old gods and primal fears still reside. Most strikingly, he reconciles the apparent opposition between paganism and Christianity, not by choosing a side, but by embodying the truth that both traditions spring from a shared human awe at the miracle of life and the mystery of death. His leafy face is a perfect vessel for our projections. The medieval peasant saw a warning about sin, the Gothic artisan saw the glory of God's creation, and the Romantic artist saw a lost pastoral ideal. Today we see in him an ecological prophet, a silent witness to the environmental cost of our progress. He gives a face to our deep-seated longing for a world where humanity is not an outsider, but a participant in the great green web of life. We look at him and we see our own fears of mortality, our hopes for renewal, and our grief for a natural world under siege. His ambiguity is not a flaw, it is his greatest strength. A symbol with a single fixed meaning can be understood, filed away and forgotten. But a symbol that is fluid, that whispers a dozen different stories at once, demands our perpetual attention. He invites us into a conversation that has been going on for 1,000 years. A conversation about who we are, where we come from, and what we might yet become. He is a mirror of stone and leaf, and we see in him exactly what we need to see. You can begin your own hunt for the green man this very weekend. He is often hiding in plain sight, waiting for a patient eye to find him. Start with your local parish church, especially those with medieval origins. Do not just glance at the stained glass, instead, look up. Scan the roof bosses, those small, carved knobs where the wooden ribs of the ceiling intersect. Peer at the ends of the pews, at the misericords, those little ledges carved on the underside of folding seats. Examine the stone capitals atop columns, and the intricate carvings around doorways and fonts. He favors the shadows and the high places, but his domain extends beyond the churchyard. Step into an old pub with a name like the Green Man Inn, and you might find his weathered face staring back at you from a wooden sign or a fireplace mantel. Even older cemeteries can be a surprising treasure trove, where his foliate visage adorns Victorian and Edwardian gravestones, a final, poignant symbol of life springing from death. Carry a small notebook and start a Green Man journal. Sketch the faces you find, note the church or location, the type of foliage, and the expression. Is he serene or in agony, disgorging leaves or made of them? Over time, you will not just have a collection of drawings. You will have a map of a secret, leafy network woven right through your local landscape. One traveler reported finding a particularly fine example, not in a grand cathedral, but carved into the armrest of a quiet, country church pew, worn smooth by centuries of hands. Another discovered a tiny, grinning green man peeking from behind a drainpipe on a city building, a whimsical gift from a long-forgotten stonemason. These personal encounters transform the symbol from a historical curiosity into a living companion. Each discovery feels like a secret handshake with the past, a quiet moment where the stone seems to breathe, and the leaves almost rustle in the still air. From the deep pagan forests to the soaring arches of Christian naves, and into the heart of our modern ecological consciousness, the Green Man has walked an incredible journey. He is not a relic to be catalogued or a puzzle with one correct solution. He is a living mystery, a symbol that has continuously evolved while holding fast to its core truth, the relentless, verdant force of life itself. This face woven from leaves has been a pagan god in hiding, a Christian sermon in stone, a reminder of our own mortality, and now a powerful voice for our planet. His enduring power lies not in a single meaning, but in his beautiful, profound ambiguity. He invites us not to find an answer, but to engage in a conversation that spans centuries, connecting us to the ancient wildness within and around us. So the next time you pass an old church, a historic pub, or even a modern building with a touch of carved stone, pause for a moment. Look closer at the old stones around you, and you might just feel the green man's gaze. Share your own photos and stories in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the hidden symbols of our world.